Welcome to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha Mckeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, author of Plant Food is Medicine, and naturally a health, wellness, and mindfulness enthusiast. I believe that happiness is a choice, and I built my company upon this ethos. This show is a platform where we will discuss all things health, wellness, and mindfulness in hopes of inspiring you further on your journey. We will be sharing inspiring stories, health, wellness, and mindfulness hacks, as well as anything else pertaining to living your best choice life. My hope is that you may hear something on every episode of this podcast that will genuinely be of value in your life. Welcome back to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha Mckeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery and author of Plant Food is Medicine. If you want to support this show, you can do so by visiting us online at choicejuicery.com. Get yourself a copy of that cookbook, or of course, shop any of our amazing online products that we're shipping nationally now, from our protein to our greens powder, elixir powders, nut butters, so much on there. So go check it out and support the show while you're at it. Also, you can visit us at any of our 7 locations. We have 1 up in Orange County down in San Clemente and 6 here in San Diego, all over the coast. So please pop in and support the show while you're getting healthy. Today's guest is actually somebody I met in one of the shops. I was in my San Clemente store, probably over a year ago now, and I met Milana McKhann and her mother in the shop, and we hit it off right away. We share some similar passions, one of those being our passion for Joe Dispenza's work, and her and her mother have been to like a couple dozen of the retreats, I believe, and we really connected over all the Joe Dispenza stuff. Started following her on social media, and she's a manifestation coach, and she uses subconscious rewiring to help her clients to up-level their lives and call in all the things that they're looking for. So I thought we could have a really fun conversation with Milana on the podcast, talking about some of the tools that she uses in her coaching practice, some of the tools that she's learned through all of her Joe Dispenza experience, to help us figure out some of this manifestation and rewiring of our brains so we can call in more of the amazing things that we want to see in our lives. So let's get Milana on here and dive into this fun conversation. Milana, thank you so much for being here on the Choice Lifestyle Podcast today. I'm so excited to have you on.
Yay, thank you so much for having me, Nastasha. I'm so excited to see your beautiful smiling face and connect with you.
Yay, likewise. Okay, so I already introduced you to the audience, and I shared with them how we met up in San Clemente at my shop up there, and how I met you and your mom, and we just really connected over the Joe Dispenza stuff. And I started following you online, and I saw what you were up to with like coaching and manifestation and all this amazing stuff, rewiring, and just so much cool stuff coming from your page right now. So I wanted to jump in and have a conversation with you about all of those things. And I feel like it'd be fun to just kind of start with like your history, your background a little bit, how you got into Joe Dispenza to begin with, and we'll kind of go from there. So share with us a little bit about that.
Amazing. Yes, I love it. Okay, so the way I got into Joe Dispenza and manifestation is essentially like my whole life came crumbling down. Everything fell apart. It was about like 3.5 years ago. And at the time, I was trying to run a couple of businesses. Like as an entrepreneur, I was working over 70 hours a week.
Wow.
And losing money in those businesses. I wasn't into spirituality or meditation at all. And I just became like so far gone from my soul, from myself. I was in a toxic relationship. I ended up getting cheated on. And that was the moment where I was like, working hard is not working for me. Something is not clicking.
Yeah.
And I just knew something was going to have to change. So luckily, shortly after that, I came across Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural. I read it in like,
good book.
Yeah, the best. I read it in about 2 days. Well, listened on audio book at like 2 times speed. And then I started meditating every day, and I changed my whole life within 2 months. Like I moved, I got all new friends, I got a new job opportunity, I got a new boyfriend, like literally everything changed so quickly. And since then, I've just been obsessed with manifestation because I was like, that's literally the only thing that did all of this was changing my energy. So now I'm just into like all the energy things like EFT, EMDR, like just all the things to manifest a new reality. So that's like how I got into all this.
I love it. I love that you brought up Becoming Supernatural. It's one of my all-time favorite books. I've countless book clubs on it. It's my
Wow.
absolute favorite book. It's interesting because the book I tried to manifest for years, like, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I've tried to manifest for years. Like, I think maybe 15 years ago, I started like, okay, like meditation. Meditation is good for me, right? Like, I should meditate.
Hmm.
And I, got like the Headspace app, and I'd be like, okay, set my timer, and I'd be like, has it been, are we there yet? Are we there yet? I was like, staring at the wall, it was so hard for me. I didn't get it. I would just do it because I was told it was good for me, but I didn't understand it. And then the first book I read that inspired me was Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment. The way he described his relationship to meditation, it sounded like a love affair. And I was like, what is that? I want what he has. Like, I don't have that. It's hard for me to meditate. I don't understand meditation. I don't know what it's doing for me. I don't get it. But that guy found something juicy, and I want what he has. So then I was like looking for tools. And that's when I stumbled onto Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural. And that book changed everything for me. It gave me the tools that I needed to access that place. And I'm happy to say I now have a love affair with meditation. But, finding that book and finding those practical tools, and even some of Joe Dispenza's guided meditations and things like that initially, to help me to like get to that place that was possible that I hadn't accessed yet. So I love that you brought that up. If you haven't read that book yet, for anyone listening, it is an absolute game changer of a book, and I highly recommend it. Okay,
Yeah, that's
so,
amazing.
and what a testament to, like, in 3 years, like, look at your life today from 3 years ago, how quick, you said it in 2 months, it was that big of a change. And that's what's possible, right? When we shift our thinking, when we rewire things in our brain, we can create a different reality, and it can happen so fast. And you're a living testament to that. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
What led you to, and I think I know the answer to this, but what led you to now teaching this? You go from learning this just 3 years ago to now you are kind of an expert, I would say, in the field. I look to
Oh,
you even, and I'm like, wow, the way you teach and share some of this stuff, it's so digestible. It's so easy to understand. You put it in such a, I don't know, you teach it so well. And it's so crazy to hear that you've only been doing it for 3 years, because you are quite an expert at it already. So share how you got into teaching.
you're so sweet. I appreciate you so much.
Aw.
I'm sure you can relate to this, and probably anyone listening can relate to this, but like when you experience something so incredible, you just want to share it with other people. Like
Mm.
if you have the best smoothie in the world, you want to make it for everyone and start a whole juice company. Like you want to share what has changed your life, and like what makes you feel so good, and what's given you, yeah, just a beautiful life. So that's, I think, why I ended up teaching. And I didn't even ever like have a moment where I thought I really want to teach this or be an expert in it. I just like
Mm.
was obsessed with it, was learning about it all the time. And then I was like, I want to start making videos and sharing it online, because like Dr. Joe is incredible, but he's also so sciencey and
Yes.
so intense.
Yes.
And I think like you and I love that, but
Of course.
there's so many people who don't resonate with that, or who will
Hmm.
never take the time to like read his books. So I was like, if I
Exactly.
can just summarize these in a very digestible way, like
Mm.
we can get the message out to so many more people. So that's
Yes.
really how I got into teaching it, is just like wanting to give back what's been given to me. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And they say, if you really want to learn something, teach it. So I think that,
Mm.
by teaching, we actually become better experts at it. I really resonate with what you said about just being so passionate about something and having such a big experience with it. They just like, you want to share that. I obviously, with the juice space and with making smoothies and choice and all that stuff, but also with breath work, I, started learning somatic breath work. Gosh, it's been a couple of years now, maybe 2 years ago, but I had this profound healing experience with it. And I was like, I want you to have what I had. And so I teach now as well, something I do not really as a business, but more of just a hobby on the side whenever I can, whenever I'm asked to lead in breath work. It's just such a passion of mine, and it's because it did something for me. So I resonate with that a lot. I want to go back to, just to rewind for a minute, something that you said at the beginning, which was like you were going through a really hard time in your life. Your life was essentially falling apart in your eyes. You were cheated on. Breaking a relationship is incredibly painful, especially in a situation like that. And you're changing careers and all these big changes, and it can feel so brutal. It can feel so painful and so horrible, but oftentimes those moments are the catalysts that lead us to just greener pastures that we could have never even imagined. And so I want to just touch on that. I don't want to brush over that because I think so many of us go through these really difficult times in our lives and we think like, man, like it's just everything's going to shit. It's all bad. It's all awful, you know?
Hmm.
Oftentimes it's like, no, what's happening is actually like you're being redirected into a different path, a different direction. So it might not feel very good. It might not feel like a gift, but it is a gift. It's all a gift. And if you keep your heart open and, you're present through the process, I think that you can be led to some incredible places. I mean, look at you, for example. I know for me, I've been through a lot of that in my life where seems like things are going really bad and I'm going backwards, but actually it's like the bow and arrow where like they pull the arrow back.
Mm.
In order to go forward, you have to pull the arrow back so it can shoot forward. It's like that. It's like sometimes it feels like things are all falling apart and crashing down, but it's like, let's get excited about like, okay, well, what's next? Like, if this isn't it, then I'm excited to see what's coming next.
1,000%. I'm so glad you brought that up because, like, when we're in the thick of that dark night of the soul, going through those extremely hard times, it feels like it's going to last forever. And
It
it feels
does.
like there's no way out. But the truth is like, I wouldn't trade any of those difficult times I've gone through for easier times because it created who I am today. And like, I wouldn't have
Completely.
learned how to meditate if
Yeah.
I didn't get cheated on and go broke. I wouldn't have learned how to manifest money. Like, and I'm sure it's the same for you with all of these beautiful things you've created in your life. I mean, your company, like teaching breathwork, all these things. Like, I'm sure those weren't just born out of like, life is perfect. Let's just do this.
No, quite the contrary. I love that you share that it feels like it's going to last forever because that's such a common theme. I had a restaurant consultant, if you will, who I worked with for several years, and he's still a dear friend of mine to this day. But he used to share this story with me about how he was running resorts somewhere in, I don't know, it's like the Bahamas or somewhere, and he said that like, during the day they'd take these little like catamaran boats out, the little mini ones, out into the middle of the water, and sometimes these storms would roll in. And I mean, he would go from being like beautiful, clear skies and beautiful, calm waters to like it looked treacherous. And sometimes in the midst of those storms, people would, they think they were going to die because it would be so tumultuous. The water would get so rough, the sky would be so dark all of a sudden, the rain and the wind, and they think we're never going to make it out. And he said, even the worst storms never last forever. And they would every time without fail. Those storms would pass, the waters would calm, but in the midst of it, it would feel like this is it. This is the new forever. And we all do that when we're going through the dark nights of the soul, going through the breakups or the loss of a job or the loss of a loved one, even. I mean, the pain
Mm,
that comes out of losing somebody, whether it be to death or loss of a relationship, loss of friendship, loss of any kind of loss, any kind of suffering, right, that we create in those situations, it feels like it's the new forever. And that's just simply not true. And so, yeah, I think it's important to address that. Okay,
yeah.
moving on from that. So you start teaching.
Hmm.
I guess I want to know, you had this drastic change. You mentioned meditation. You mentioned how you started meditating every day. What are some of the things that you used in that time to reprogram and rewire your brain? Because I know there are a lot of people like me that are like, well, I meditate every day too. They're doing the Headspace apps and they're doing their best to meditate, but they're not seeing those life-changing experiences. Like, what are some of the tools that you use that you can share with our audience today that really helped you to rewire your brain? And if it's manifest or not manifestation, but if it's a natural result of course, but if it's meditation, tell us about that. Dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, one of the other techniques that has gone so perfectly with meditation is EFT tapping. I'm curious if you've ever done it before.
I haven't. I've done EMDR, which I think
Okay.
is totally different, but I've never done EFT tapping. I've heard about it, but I'm dying to know more. So tell me everything.
Okay, cool. So EFT and EMDR are actually like quite similar,
Okay.
but essentially the way I've used EFT to help me manifest, like you can use it to manifest anything, is first you do a little bit of introspection for uncovering like what's the root of the limiting belief or the block that's keeping me from my goal. So an example would be like if you have a goal to make, let's just say, a six-figure salary,
Okay.
and you're like, I'm meditating every day, I'm visualizing it, but it's just not happening. Like I'm still stuck. So then you want to ask yourself, why I think I can't make a six-figure salary? Or like,
Mm.
what part of me thinks I'm not worthy or it's not possible?
Mm.
And then you want to ask yourself, when in the past did I feel that way? So if it's like, oh, that's for other people, it's not for me, you want to
Mm.
sit with that belief. When in childhood did I think that success that I want is for other people, not for me?
Oh.
It's always going to link back to some childhood moment where it's like maybe in elementary school you didn't get the gold star and everybody else
Mm.
did.
Yeah.
And then it's like we don't have an analytical mind in childhood, so we download that belief in our subconscious mind. And then it applies to like all these other things in adulthood, which is so brutal and rough. But
Mm-hmm.
once we uncover it, we can use tapping, which is just like tapping on these meridian points where you soothe your inner child and then you reprogram what you'd rather believe. So you could just tap in and say, even though I went through this experience in childhood, I still love and accept myself. And maybe now it's safe to move forward and I can get what I want. So you just
Oh.
go through that process to uncover like what's the root of what's holding me back? And then what can we rewire it to believe instead? So then your
I love
meditation is
this.
going to be like on that airport runway walkway thing where it's like you take one step but you're moving three steps forward rather than like walking the opposite direction on the treadmill and you're like, why am I not moving forward?
I love
So,
this. For anyone who's listening to this and not watching, at some point you should go back and watch this. It'll be, you can see it on Spotify and on YouTube, but you can see where she's actually like tapping as she's doing this. I think it's worth
mm.
checking that out. Of course, you can also follow her on Instagram, and I'm sure you can find a lot of stuff on there as well about this. I think you also have a YouTube, right?
Yes, I have some tapping tutorials on YouTube too.
I'm actually going to check those out. I'm super curious. It's interesting because I find that like the further I get on this like healing journey of mine, start to see how everything cross pollinates. Like everything that I've done,
Mm,
all like it's all the same thing, but different ways to do the same thing. I'm going through a process right now called the presence process. I've done it a couple of times in the past. I'm doing it again. And what you just said is very similar to what Michael Brown teaches in the presence process, where like they say that like anytime you feel upset or triggered by something, it's like you thank the messenger. Like somebody upset you or hurt you or
mm,
whatever it is, it's like that person's just a messenger showing you what's already inside of you. And so you like thank the messenger, let them go, and then you go be with that unintegrated aspect of yourself. And so if it's like, oh, I feel abandoned, right? It's like, well, let me go be with that. Let me go be with I feel abandoned. And it's like, have I felt this before? And then it's like it takes you back to the last time you felt it, and when have I felt it before then? And it takes you. The
mm,
goal is to get all the way back to that first time that you ever felt that way, right? And then there's like breath work, and there's all these things that go with it. And then same thing with EMDR. When I was diagnosed with PTSD from my childhood, and my therapist recommended EMDR, and I did that. Only I think at the time the person I was working with didn't. I think it was a newer modality for my therapist at the time. And she didn't really give me context. She just was like, you're going to do this thing called EMDR. Come in and
mm,
think of something that is painful. Okay. And now we're going to tap on you and what's coming up for you, what's coming up for you. And it's like all of a sudden I'd show up for my therapy session feeling great. And because I had a lot of suppressed stuff, right? So it's like I had it covered up. I like to say there's a pile of shit sitting in my living room, and I had thrown a bunch of potpourri at it. Like it's like okay, it's covered up. Let's keep it there. Just keep throwing some potpourri at it. And so that was what was happening. And so, but I'd go in and she'd remove the potpourri, and I'd be like, oh, this
mm,
feels horrible. I was leaving there every day feeling worse, and then I'd feel horrible, and I'd start feeling better in a few days. It'd be time to go back and do it again. And so I quit. I was like, this is awful. And the presence
mhm,
process, it does the same thing that EMDR did to me, but it gave me context to understand that sometimes you have to feel worse before you feel better, because you're actually going back to some really buried subconscious things and belief systems. And when you were sharing that a minute ago about get the gold star at school and what belief system you created, because like you said, you can't contextualize at that age. When you're a kid,
mhm.
you can't really understand things in that way. So yeah, you're right. You categorize these things and you create belief systems out of them. And we have no idea how many subconscious beliefs are running our lives.
Yeah.
It's madness really when you start to uncover it. And as you were just saying that, I found myself getting emotional. I had an image, and this is something that I've done some work around, getting dropped off at school. So I grew up in extreme poverty. I mean, like
Mm.
welfare, food stamps, like dumpster diving. It's embarrassing to admit, but like we were very, very poor, often homeless, food insecurity, like all of that stuff. And at some point, my mom got smart and realized that like every time we got evicted from a new apartment, we'd have to move, and she'd have to do all this paperwork and change schools. So she found like a family friend who lived in a really nice neighborhood and started using their address for our address so that we could stay in one school, despite the fact that we were just getting, kicked out of place after place after place. And so
Oh.
for that was the longest period of time I went to the same school. I think it was like a 3-year stretch. And that's the longest time I went to the same school in my whole life. And during this time, I was going to a really nice school in a really nice neighborhood with very like well-to-do kids, right? Kids that had like normal lives, right?
Hmm.
The contrast was so big for me. I'd get dropped off in like my oversized hand-me-downs with holes in them and smelling like mildew because we washed our clothes in our bathtub and hung them up in our smoke-filled apartment
Oh.
to dry. And in our little brown Pinto that's all beat up. And then I get dropped off, and my classmates were getting dropped off in their like convertible BMWs, getting out in Roxy clad clothing with the newest shoes
Hmm.
and the latest backpacks and what have you. And I'd get out, and I felt the disparity. I felt like oh my God, like they have and I have not. Like, and that belief that
Hmm.
was created at that time was like, I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough. And I spent my whole life trying to earn my worth outside of myself, which there's a lot of
Wow.
people who can do that. You can find success without addressing these beliefs. You can absolutely find financial success. I know a lot of people that are very successful but very unhappy, and define success. Is it a dollar amount in the bank account, or are you happy? Are you thriving? Are your relationships, are your friendships thriving? Like, are your finances thriving? Like, yes, but all of those should be in place, I think, to call someone truly successful.
Hmm.
And I was like, great, and have more and have more. And I was chasing that worthiness. And what I realized was it doesn't matter what car I drive, what house I live in, what clothes I wear. None of that could earn me that worthiness, because that was something that I had to go inside to work on. That's an inside job. And it was around that belief system that came up. And that just brought that right back to me when you were talking about the gold star.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a profound story, and it's so interesting because, like, looking at you, I would never think that you came from a situation like that because you're so beautiful, eloquent, put together. You
Mm,
have your businesses, like, you serve, like, you're this incredible human. And
thank you.
I think, I don't know, it's just so inspiring to hear your story and to hear where you come from. And
Mm,
just for everyone to realize like we all have that little girl or that little boy inside of us that still feels like I'm not good enough, and just to be treating each other when we interact like out in the world with
mhm.
love, because no matter how put together or how rich or successful someone is,
Yep.
we all have that inner child that like we're still working on healing.
So true. I was listening to something Gabor Mate was saying the other day. I think somebody shared like an interview with me, and the guy had said something about like when adults are, throwing tantrums or whatever. And Gabor Mate was like, "Oh, adults don't throw tantrums." And the guy was like, "Yeah, they do. Like I see adults throw tantrums all the time." And he's like, "No, that's an inner child throwing a tantrum. That's an adult who has unintegrated aspects from their childhood." Hearing him talk like that, I had a energy worker that I was working with for a while who told me, she was like, we're all just like little children inside of these grown up bodies, and we run around acting like adults, but we all have these unintegrated aspects of ourselves. She's like, the next time you see somebody, throwing a tantrum as an adult, just picture them as a little kid who just had their cookies taken from them. That has
Mm.
been one of the best pieces of advice that has helped me with difficult people in my life. I literally, how like they say when you give a speech, like imagine everyone in their underwear, like that can settle your nerves. That doesn't work for me, by the way. But
Yeah, no.
it's like one of those tools though that's been so powerful for me. It's like whenever someone's like lashing out or throwing a tantrum as an adult, a grown man, like having a meltdown about something, I just imagine him as a 5-year-old little boy, and someone has just stolen his cookies, because that's the part of him that's like actually acting out. It's not this 50-year-old grown adult man that's being ridiculous. It's actually the 5-year-old version of him that has this unintegrated aspect of himself. And that's the version that's acting out right now. And so it helps you to have more compassion, as you're just saying. Like, we could all be more compassionate and realize we all have our stuff. We all, no matter how put together somebody is, no matter how successful they look, as you said, it's like we're all working through something, and we all have these little parts of ourselves, these little humans inside that you need to tend to from time to time.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. My mom and I joke about that all the time. We're like, we're all just like big babies.
I know, totally. We are. I love your
It's
mom,
so
by the way.
funny.
Oh my gosh, you hit the jackpot in the mom department. She is so
Yeah.
rad.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, she's my best friend. I feel so
Oh,
lucky.
I
I'm sure
love
it's the
that.
same with you and your daughters. Whenever I
Yeah,
see like your posts on Instagram, they're like scaring you. You're like, not today.
yeah,
You must be
right.
the funnest, coolest mom.
Oh, I love it. I feel very, very blessed. My oldest and I definitely, I think because also I had her at such a young age. So I'm 40 and she's 21. And so the
Mhm.
age gap, it's wild to be 40 years old and have a 21-year-old daughter. But I feel like I have a built in best friend, which is something I can say now that she's an adult, right? As a kid, you have to be the mom. You can't be the friend. You have to be the mom,
Mhm.
which is difficult. But, if you do a good job and you raise them right, it's like they grow up and they become these amazing adults, right? And then they get to be like your built-in best friend. They're so rad. So I love it. It's
Yeah.
really fun.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so let's get
amazing.
back to some tools. Okay, so we
Yes.
talked about EFT, which is a powerful tool I didn't know about. I cannot wait to go to your videos and watch more and practice EFT. But what are some other tools that you can share with us? I think I saw a YouTube of yours where you're talking about changing boxes. And that was
Oh,
fascinating. I wanted to talk a little bit about that today because I thought that was something that our audience could really appreciate.
yes. Okay, well, let's get a little bit Joe Dispenza-y with changing boxes
Hmm.
because that's where the
My
concept comes
favorite.
from. Yeah, I did not invent changing boxes. That's a Joe Dispenza thing. Essentially, I mean, you know this, but Joe Dispenza teaches this concept called changing boxes, and it's where he explains that we live in a multiverse where there's infinite parallel realities. This is not just like one fixed dimension. And we're constantly shifting through realities through our thoughts, through our feelings, and through our decisions and like actions that we take. So you're constantly shifting boxes already by going throughout your day-to-day life. The problem is we stay in one box, like one fixed dimension where like you're stuck with like a relationship trouble or a financial block because you're thinking, feeling, and acting the same way. In order for us to change boxes, we can make different choices, make different actions, or we can go within, do a little meditation, and you focus on what you want to have as your reality instead. So instead of letting your attention always go to, I'm fighting with my partner, I feel so stuck in this relationship, this sucks, you would then shift your attention into a reality where I'm so in love with myself and with my partner, and my relationship is just like blossoming. And you just like focus on that in a meditation, your desired reality, and you're actually shifting into a parallel universe whenever you do that. And so you might come out of the meditation and then you still have that same dynamic in your relationship, that same struggle. But over time, as you keep doing that, you will end up either being in a different relationship or having a different relationship dynamic. And it works with everything because you know that famous quote where energy goes, where
Attention
attention
goes
goes.
where energy flows or something. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So by doing that, we're shifting into a parallel universe.
I
So I'm curious your
love.
thoughts on it though. Like, how would you
Yes. Oh
describe it?
my God, so good. Okay, well, something I share a lot, like every time I meet a new hire, I have a whole conversation I have with them at Choice. And one of the things that I share is my favorite quote, which is Albert Einstein said, "You can't solve your problems at the same level of thinking that created them." And so I
Chills.
think that relates so well with what Joe is teaching about changing the boxes, because that's exactly it. I'm always saying, Choice, we have this thing, I call it an emotional moat. And I say every time you walk in the doors at Choice, you drop all your baggage at the door, all your stories, all your negativities, all that stuff, drop it at the door, and you step in the choice bubble, which is,
Mm,
choice, word for present moment. essentially. And I
Mm.
invite everyone to step in the present moment because they say it's impossible to be unhappy if you're in the present moment. If you're unhappy, you're dwelling on something that happened in the past, or you're projecting, some fear into what's going to happen in the future, but you're not right here, right now. If I'm right here, right
Mm-hmm.
now, hanging out with Milana, it's impossible to be unhappy. It's only if I'm
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, did that guy text me back, or did that happen, or like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's like that's when you lose the present moment awareness, you're not happy. And I always say, if I'm stuck in a problem, and I can't find a solution, the worst thing I can do is focus on the problem. The best thing I
Mm.
can do is go get happy, go get myself in a different frame of mind. Sometimes that's through surfing, through meditation, through being in nature, whatever that is for me, that just gets me into that heart open space of just joy and bliss and happiness. And from there, it's like shocking what happens. There was a time I remember so vividly where I applied this in real time, and I had some big financial issue, and I don't remember even what the issue was today, but I just remember like being like, oh, I have to do this thing, and in order to do this thing I have to do this. Like the only option is A or B, and neither of those options work. I don't know how to
Oh.
solve this problem, and I was so stuck on the problem, and all I could see was A or B, and neither of those could work. And I was like, what do I do? I was so stuck. And after like spiraling out as we do on the problem and getting absolutely nowhere and doing it and being stressed and getting nowhere, I was like, I'm gonna put this in a box. I'm gonna put this over here, and then I'm gonna like just leave it there for a little while. It's like me focusing on it isn't helping. So let me go do something else. And so I did. I went surfing. I went meditated. I went like for a hike in nature. Like I just spent the day being in nature and getting happy and getting completely away from the problem.
Mm.
Later that day, like in the evening, not even thinking about it, all of a sudden it was the craziest thing. Like it's like somebody opened a door and all of a sudden it was like C, D, E, F. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even those ideas didn't even come to me before. And they were very like, how did I not even see them? Like the solutions were right there, but I couldn't see them because I was seeing through the lens of fear and stress. And you got
Mm.
to change your glasses. You got to put on your optimistic glasses. And it's hard to do that when you're stuck in the problem. So you have to, like you said, change your box, like get into
Mm.
a different state. And I think that also brings up another topic, which is like when it comes to manifesting, people think
Mm-hmm.
it's just like you say, okay, yeah, like I focus on having this big, beautiful home, and I'll have this big, beautiful home, but I can't get it if I don't feel good about the manifesting of it. But I don't know how to feel good about it because when I am focusing on it, I feel bad because I'm not there where I want to be.
Mm.
And so people are like, how am I supposed to change the way that I feel? And I think you really touched on that because it's not like I'm visualizing the house that I want over there while I'm sitting in this house over here. It's like I'm actually putting myself in that house over there. So much so in my visualization, it feels so real and so good that I don't even need it to happen because it already did. Like if that makes sense. That's kind
Yes.
of the way that I like to think about it. Like, I get to a place with it where it feels good because you can't manifest from a place of lack. I think all call it the universe, call it, God, call it whatever you want, all it knows how to do is amplify. Like, if
Mm.
it knows how to multiply, amplify, right? So if I'm putting out like not enough, okay, great. We're going to amplify not enough. If I'm
Mm.
putting out like, I want this, well, I'm going to get more of, I want this versus
Wow.
am this,
Mm-hmm.
I have this, I am here versus I want to be here, because that is a negative, and you're amplifying the negative, the wanting, which means I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way that I look at it, but I don't know, if I'm not an expert.
No, you are so an expert. Are you kidding me? I absolutely love everything you just said. And I especially love that you said, like, you'll go surfing, you'll go hiking, like, you'll do something fun. You're not necessarily being like, okay, I'm gonna do this serious meditation
Yeah.
now and like happy. You're like, no, I'm actually gonna go do what makes me happy. And then that
Yes,
shifts your energy state. And then when you come back, you're like, okay, I'm good, I'm happy. Suddenly all these other options are available. So I think that
yeah,
that's like such a good practical way to change boxes and to change your energy is like go have fun. I like
absolutely.
to give myself a little dance party. Like I'll put
I
on,
love that.
yeah, just like a fun happy song because I know that that will shift my energy. Even if I'm sad, I'm like, okay, let's dance it out. And then like
Yes,
after a song you're like, okay, I'm good. Like I can move forward. So,
totally. It's funny. I started
yeah.
taking dance lessons God, I guess it's been almost a year now. And it's like one of those things that I do now. Like whenever I'm having like a bummer of a day or like something's like funky, it's like I dance. And good luck trying to throw yourself a pity party while you're dancing. It's not going to happen. Like it's
Literally.
impossible to be unhappy while you're dancing. It's just like move your body. And I think that's such a underrated thing, when it comes to like people that struggle with any kind of whether disorder like depression or anxiety or whatever it is, like go move your body. It is the one tool that has worked for me. I came from a family of people that are like, I guess you could say classically diagnosed with depression. My mom had a million diagnoses. I couldn't, like bipolar and all these things she was diagnosed with over the years. And then my dad went undiagnosed, but he had in the end some severe mental health issues that went undetected. He actually took his life in the end, which is crazy. And so when it comes to mental health issues, I am like the prime candidate for having mental health issues. But my whole I think eating right has been a huge tool for me. I started cleaning up my diet in my 20s, in my early 20s, and it's like you don't know that you feel bad until you feel good. And
Yes.
I started little by little like changing things out, and the more bad processed foods I got rid of and replaced them with whole foods, like clean organic whole foods, the better and better and better I felt, and the more mental clarity and the more energy. And then ironically, what comes with more energy is what? I want to move my body. I have energy to move my body.
Mm,
So I'm eating cleaner. I
yes.
have energy. Now I'm moving my body. And then body in motion stays in motion. Is that like Newton's like first law of motion or something like that? It's like a body in motion stays in motion. And so
Hmm.
inertia, like you're fighting inertia. And so you start moving your body, and then it's easy to move your body once you're moving your body. And so doing these things, they're all such underrated tools. And then of course, going more advanced, I think now you have like things like meditation and EFT and breath work and all these other amazing tools. But it's like start with the foundation, start with the basics, like clean up your diet, move your body. And then there's all these other amazing tools that you'll have the clarity and the access to. Because I don't think if you introduced this stuff to me before I started eating clean, I would have even been open to it, just because energetically I wasn't ready for it. Like the cleaner I was in my diet, the more I had access to like a different part of my brain. I'll say, I don't know if that's scientific or not, but that's how I
I
feel about
think
it.
it is.
Thank you.
I love that. That actually reminds me of something I've heard Dr. Joe say like on a podcast once, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but somebody was asking him about like how do you maintain like optimal health in all areas? Because some people will say like, "Oh, just meditate that you have a good body, just meditate that you're healthy and whatever," but then people will go like eat like garbage.
Yeah,
But Dr. Joe made this comment. He was like, you got to stay balanced chemically, physically, and emotionally. So meditation is like that emotional aspect,
of
but then
course.
chemical is like all the foods we're putting in our
Yeah,
bodies. And then physical is the movement. And Dr. Joe was saying if you need at least two of those to be strong to like feel good. If you have
totally.
two that are weak, like you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So I think it's super cool that you mentioned like, yeah, eat good, move your body, and
Yeah.
then add on like some emotional regulation thing. So yeah, actually I did have a question for you. This just
Yes.
like popped in my mind. So lately I've been getting into juicing, and I was thinking about how we have lots of neurons in our gut.
Yeah.
How would you describe the relationship between like juicing and just eating like clean organic whole foods
Hmm.
affecting the neurons in our gut, affecting our emotions? I don't know if that
Mm.
question made sense.
Well, that's interesting. Something I'm always saying is like, people say you are what you eat. I say you crave what you eat.
Mm,
And so I think, and again, a lot of these things are my theories,
love it.
not backed by data yet that I know of, but I believe that like, have you ever noticed how like if you eat out, like the next time you're hungry, like you crave eating out.
Yeah.
What we do, we crave. If you drink alcohol, if you consume alcohol, you crave alcohol. Like when you take a long break from alcohol, you stop craving alcohol. When you take a long break from coffee, you stop craving coffee. When you take a long break from eating sugar, you stop craving sugar. We're feeding our gut all the time these things. And I think that it affects, it's like a second brain, and it starts to like crave the things that we're feeding it. And so I believe truly that when we clean up our diet, we clean up our gut health, and then we start craving healthier things. That's why I think juice is so powerful,
Mm.
because, when in your life are you going to sit down and eat 6 pounds of like leafy greens? Like you'll probably throw up if you eat 6 pounds at one time, like of broccoli, right? Like it's a lot, that's a lot of, but the
Yeah.
nutrients, like the micronutrients inside of all of the 6 pounds of produce that you're feeding your body, can change your body on a cellular level, and it
Mm.
makes you start to crave. That's why people, like when people do my cleanse, mostly, like we have a 1 day cleanse and a 3 day cleanse, and then we have a custom one where you can go longer. But the 1 day cleanse is for people who have already, like, they already live a really healthy lifestyle, but maybe they like had a birthday party over the weekend or a wedding or something, they went a little wild and they've got to like get back on track. They do like a 1 day cleanse. But the 3 day cleanse is for that person who's like, I want to change. I'm ready to
Mm.
like change. I fell off the wagon, or I never was on the wagon to begin with, and I need to like clean up my diet, change my habits. I think one of the most powerful things with our cleanse is that you're flooding your system with all these nutrients for 3 days, and you're
Mm.
depriving yourself of those things that you've been doing, like alcohol, coffee, sugar, processed foods. And so after the third day, I always find people in the store that have been on 3 day cleanse on day 4, and I'm like, wait, you're off your cleanse, like what are you doing here? But it's like because they're now craving this, because they've reset their gut biome, they've reset things, and they're like now craving more of the things that they're having. Plus, they're craving health. And
Mm.
when you get a taste of health, I used to hear people say, "Oh, I'm here for a good time, not a long time." It used to drive me
Yeah.
nuts. I'm like, listen, you don't know what a good time is. Like, wait till you feel good in your body. You can be here for a good
Yes.
time and a long time. I promise you. Like once you
Hmm.
start feeling good, like you won't sacrifice that for anything. Like there's no slice of pizza in the world that's worth like me feeling good. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree with balance. I think it's okay to, it's not what you do 100% of the time. It's what you do 90% of the time, like 10%
Mm.
of the time, if you want to like, whatever, but like, what are you doing every day? That's what's important, not what you do once in a great while.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
It
that's
totally does.
awesome. Good. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about meditation. I want to dive in a little bit more before our time is up. One of the meditations that I did that changed everything for me was a Joe Dispenza meditation. I'm curious if you've ever done this one. It's the Rising Water meditation by Joe Dispenza.
I've never even heard of it.
No way. Okay, so like
Yeah.
this is like back in the day when I first started getting into Joe Dispenza. Before I read Becoming Supernatural, I had been exposed to Joe Dispenza, and I got downloaded a bunch of his guided meditations on iTunes back when that was like a thing that people did before like Spotify and all these other things.
I love it.
Really aging myself here. Okay, so I downloaded these meditations and I tried to listen to them. Like I didn't, until I read Becoming Supernatural, I didn't understand why they were the way that they were. I was like, this guy is weird. This stuff is weird, because imagine this part of your body in space, in around space, and you're like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
And the way he says it, and it's like it was so out there for me. I was like, I couldn't like get into it. But then I read Becoming Supernatural, where he explains what he's doing, like the science behind what he's doing and why he's doing it that way. Then I went back to those meditations that I'd had for already a couple of years unsuccessfully. And the very first one I did after reading Becoming Supernatural was this Rising Water meditation. And the craziest thing happened to me. It was my first breakthrough with meditation. I had this like I was deep in the meditation, fully had surrendered to it, and I started to see this like green arc of light like rising, as the water was supposed to be like rising up, it rises and rises in the meditation. You're like,
Oh,
your feet
wow.
are on the ground, you start visualizing like warm water on your feet, and it starts rising and rising and rising, and then it came to my eye level, and as soon as it came to my eye level, that green arc exploded. And now anytime I'm deep in meditation, I have this like visual of like a green arc of light. It's the craziest thing. When I tell people I sound
What?
crazy, but it's so rad. And then from that
Wow.
point on, I was able to access like a deeper meditation than I ever had before. But specifically, this meditation, what I love about it is that he does some rewiring. And since that's your jam, I wanted to talk to you about it. He has you, once you're really deep into this like subconscious space, if you will, he has you bring up something that you want to let go of, like an old
Mm.
familiar emotion, as he says, that you just like, it's time to let it go. So for me, maybe
Mhm.
it's like that sinking feeling of loneliness, right? I've been a single mom pretty much my entire adult life. I haven't been successful in relationships yet, and I've been doing it all, raising a family, running a business, like making decisions, doing it all. So an old
Mhm.
familiar feeling for me is that like feeling that like that's for somebody else, as you said earlier, like partnership,
Mhm.
relationship, that's for other people, and not for me. And so that would be an example of something you would use in this meditation. But it could be maybe your relationship with money, feeling like you don't have enough, or whatever it is, whatever those things that you're unhappy with in your life. And you would bring that old familiar feeling up, and then he has you do this thing where he's like, bring it up and now change. And he like does this like shocking, like now change, and then he's like, okay, you're driving in your car, and then this old familiar feeling comes up, now change, and he like, you're in the shower and the change. And he does this a few times. And at first you're kind of like, I don't know what this is doing, but
Yeah.
what it's doing is it's making what's subconscious conscious. It is really hard to change things that you don't know that you're doing. It is really hard to change a belief that you don't know that you have. And it's so subconscious, you're not aware of it. So what he's doing is he brings it up to the surface so you can change. So then it's like, I am literally driving in the car and that feeling comes up and I'm like, change. Like that, it's like it's in your awareness now, and you can do something about it. You can be aware of when you're thinking those thoughts so that you can reprogram and rewire. So one of my all-time favorite meditations, but I just wanted to get your opinion on that, see if you'd heard of that one or what your thoughts were around it.
I love that story. That's so cool. I'm dying to do the meditation now, or I should say, I'm living to do the meditation now. I'll do it tonight. Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. That's probably one of the biggest parts of change is noticing when we're going about our day, like when we're feeling those emotions and thinking those thoughts that are keeping us tied to the past, and then changing it. And like, that's
Yes.
such an effective way to change. I do something similar, like in my day-to-day life, if I catch myself feeling low or like disconnected from my dreams or my goals and thinking like, oh, that's for other people, I'll do some tapping. And we can, if someone's listening and not watching, you can just tap like right below your collarbone
Do this.
and
Like
just
right
like,
here?
yeah, like right
Does it
there,
matter what
really like,
side?
it doesn't matter what side. You can do
Okay.
two hands, you can do one hand, you just like gently tap, and you can just say clear, clear, release, release, and just keep tapping until you feel a shift. Like you might feel your shoulders drop. You might feel yourself take a deep breath and be like, okay. And then I like to think about like, what would I rather believe? So rather than thinking that's for other people, I think maybe I'm next. And that's just like a little shift.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's such a beautiful share. One of the women that I work with, who's like also one of my dearest friends to this day, she has this like cool practice of always like, the problem isn't the problem. The problem is the way you think about the problem. And
Ooh.
she always does this thing like, there's a story I'm telling about a situation and I'm not happy. What if I told a different story?
Mm.
Changing the story that we're telling. And that kind of reminds me of that. But this is the tapping thing I need to understand more about, because I've seen a lot of people getting into the EFT is what it's called, right? EFT. I've seen a lot of people getting into this, and I'm always fascinated. I see some videos. I'm like, what is that? What are they doing? What is this? They're like tapping on these parts of
Yeah.
themselves, and what is this? So I'm very excited to learn more about it, but it definitely is in alignment with all the other things that I feel like I'm doing. Like I was saying earlier, the cross pollination is so beautiful. How there's all these amazing tools, but it's all kind of the same thing. Like we are creating our own reality. If you are not happy with your reality, you get to create a different one. And here's all these beautiful tools and ways that you can, practice creating the reality that you want. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
all of this. This has been such an amazing conversation. I feel like we're going to have a follow-up one down the road. I'm going to study some EFT. You're going to do that water rising meditation. And we're going to have to come back at some point and revisit this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you forever.
Same.
For those of our audience today that are listening and don't already follow you, where can they find you so that they can follow you and learn more about all the amazing tools you have to offer?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram and YouTube. It's just my first and last name, Milana McKhann. It's spelled MILANACKHANN. And yeah, I post a lot on both Instagram and YouTube, and I have lots of free resources on there. I have free meditations and EFT videos. So knock yourself out, have some fun with it.
Yay. I know I do. I love all of your content. I am a big fan. I love everything you're putting out
Oh,
there. So
thank you so much.
yay. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on today, and we will be seeing you soon.
Yay, thank you so much.
Yay. All right. Recording is done. Thank you so much. That was so
Yay.
fun.
That was so fun. You're such an incredible podcast host. Like, you're so skilled at what you do.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. It's funny how like we can be our own worst critic, and getting into this, it was like the most terrifying thing. I said for years I wanted to do this, but I was so,
Hmm.
as an adult, it's hard. Like allow yourself to suck at something in order to get good at something. But in order to
Yes.
get good at something, you have to suck at something. Like you have to start
Yeah.
somewhere. But it really, all it takes is just, right? You pick up the microphone, you put the camera on, you live and you learn, and you get better. So it means a lot to me. I love hearing that because
No, you're literally phenomenal at it. Like, watch out, Lewis House. Nastasha is next. I'm not kidding. Yeah. Yay. Oh, yay. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. Like, this was so much fun, and I'm so excited to like promote it on social media. It's going to be awesome. Okay. I didn't. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Awesome. I'll send it over. Thank you. You too. Bye.
thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review so we can reach more people. I might even share your review on future episodes. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can find and sign up for our newsletter so that you're notified when a new episode comes out. You can support this show by purchasing anything from the Choice Juicery online shop at choicejuicery.com. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to live in San Diego, you can visit any of our 7 locations here in San Diego and Orange County. And please feel free to connect with me on social media at Nastasha Mckeon. That's NASTASHAMCKEON. Don't forget that extra S. Or you can connect with us at the Choice Juicery Instagram at Choice Juicery. Thanks again for listening in.